Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to announce the arrival of Yang Amat Berbahagia Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad and Yang Amat Berbahagia Tun Dr. Siti Hasmah Haji Muhammad Ali. Ladies and gentlemen, sila duduk. Please kindly be seated. Yang Amat Berbahagia Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, former Prime Minister of Malaysia and Honorary President, Perdana Leadership Foundation. Yang Amat Berbahagia Tun Dr. Siti Hasmah Haji Muhammad Ali. Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Datuk Sri Vincent Tan, PLF Trustee, Founder and Chairman of Berjaya Corporation Berhad. Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Nik Muhammad Nik Yaakob, Executive Director, Perdana Leadership Foundation, Distinguished Trustees of Perdana Leadership Foundation, eminent sponsors, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen. As with all Perdana Leadership Foundation events, we have saved and we are presenting the highlights at the closing event, and that would be the closing keynote address by the Foundation's Honorary President, the former Prime Minister of Malaysia, Yang Amat Berbahagia Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad. And as Malaysia's longest-serving Prime Minister, and the only one to have held the position twice, in a career spanning more than 6 decades, Tun has seen Malaysia undergo a lot of changes. Many we are all very proud of as Malaysians, and some not so positive. And at the age where most would have retired, Tun is still very much hard at work, as we all should know. And I'm told that the Perdana Leadership Foundation staff would attest that Tun still keeps to office hours. He comes to office before 9 a.m. and he doesn't leave before 5 p.m. That is on the days when he's not away from the country or away from the office, giving talks and sharing advices with groups. There is a lot we can learn from Tun on how to keep the spirit strong and high and how to keep the physical fatigue away. But for today, Tun is going to share with us his thoughts on Malaysia, our country, and how he sees the country will fare in the future in his keynote address entitled, "What Does the Future Hold for Malaysia?" We are all keen to know. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Yang Amat Berbahagia Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad. Dipersilakan, Tun.
Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon to everyone. Tan Sri Nik Muhammad Nik Yaakob, Executive Director, Perdana Leadership Foundation. Tan Sri Datuk Sri Vincent Tan Chi Yung, founder and chairman, Berjaya Corporation Berhad, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I would like to thank the organizer for inviting me to speak at the closing session of the PLF CEO Forum 2022. I'm glad to speak on the topic of what does the future hold for Malaysia. Even in the worst of times, despite my criticisms of leaders and their leadership, I have always believed that Malaysia is a blessed land, and no matter how bad the situation is, things will eventually fall in place. Of course, this belief does not stem merely from wishes and hopes, but rather on the premise that Malaysians had shown how resilient and resourceful they are, that when the chips are down, they will pick themselves up sooner rather than later. This time around, I'm still as optimistic as I was before, but with a caveat. With the polls just around the corner, Malaysians must not leave to chance as to who will rule the nation. No matter how bleak or disgusted they are with what had transpired over the past years, not participating is not an option. And it is wrong, and if the wrong people get to lead, it's not only the politicians who are to be blamed, but everyone who chose to stay away. As we grapple with our own political uncertainties, we are witness to how such uncertainties impacting the economy of the UK and other nations. Until and unless the political uncertainties are resolved, the economy and development of these nations will continue to be bleak, and as well as Malaysia's. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a time of great uncertainty but high connectivity. Though through trade, banking, and travel, we are more connected to one another than ever before. This is good in many ways, but it also makes it more likely that events in one part of the world will have bigger repercussions on the rest of the world. There is at present a war going on in Europe that has no end yet in sight. It is a war that is totally avoidable and wholly unnecessary, and yet it is happening. This conflict is causing a cascade of negative consequences. Apart from all the unnecessary lives lost, we see skyrocketing fuel and food prices, leading to record levels of inflation in Europe and in the rest of the world. In response to rising prices, interest rates are raised, including in Malaysia, thereby increasing the cost of debt for households and companies. There are also supply chain disruptions, as some ports in Europe are closed due to the war. Then there is animosity between two major powers, which has led to a trade war, other power plays, and territorial disputes may also escalate into open enmity. While Malaysia has always remained a neutral nation and should continue to remain so, we will not be spared from the economic fallout of any global conflict. The war in Europe comes on the heels of a global pandemic that caught the world by surprise and which has not truly ended. Businesses are slowly recovering, only to find that the economic landscape is different and consumer behavior shifting, many preferring online purchases, which inevitably leads to reduced dependency on employees. Retail shops will disappear to be replaced by large stores of goods to meet online demands. Going forward, there will be more events and occurrences that will not fit into any of our models of prediction and analysis. In short, the uncertainties that we face, whether they are economic or political, are likely to continue. For businesses and even governments, it means longer-term projections and forecasting models may no longer be useful as they will be less accurate. We know from the past that not even the most sophisticated economic modeling could foretell of the Asian currency crisis nor the 2008 financial meltdown. Because of our connectedness with each other, the causes and the consequences of events have become more complex and more widespread. It is time for us to revise our assumptions and forecasting models because the world is shifting away from the post-World War II industrial equilibrium. It is moving rapidly towards a new digital-dominated and information-driven equilibrium that requires new approaches. Ladies and gentlemen, during the COVID-19 lockdowns, it was technology that kept us tethered to one another. Whether we like it or not, technology is going to play an even bigger role in our lives in the coming decades. The emphasis has shifted from going online to automation, artificial intelligence, robotization, even virtual reality. With the challenges that Malaysian companies face in obtaining manpower, automation, digitalization, and robotization are becoming more crucial. But the utilization of technology in Malaysia, especially in business and industry, is still low. This could be due to cost, lack of skills, or low awareness. Malaysia cannot afford to be behind the curve for much longer because our productivity will suffer, and with that, our competitiveness. Our national productivity rate is behind those of advanced countries, and it is mainly by effective use of technology that we will be able to boost our productivity rate. With respect to technology adoption, what we need to focus on are two areas. One is policy incentives for Malaysian businesses to adopt technology with tax breaks and funding assistance. There are some initiatives and funding available, but whether these are sufficient is another question. We are one of the earliest countries in Southeast Asia to go into the knowledge age in a big way through the multimedia super corridor. The MSc has seen the birth of Malaysian technical companies and talent, but we have to keep up with the advances and find the best combination of infrastructure, policy, and incentives if we are to move our economy up the technology chain. The other is with respect to our talent base. We need to have a bigger pool of brains in this country to increase our technological adoption. Our education system needs to be upgraded. Our syllabus needs new content and more focus on critical thinking. Our pedagogy needs to change with the times because Malaysian children no longer learn the same way that their parents did. Our schools need to be better equipped with computer labs and even computers in classrooms. We need to revisit our national education blueprint and reassess its goals and targets so that our youth will not fall behind in the 21st century skills. Our R&D spending needs to be increased greatly, especially in science and technology. Malaysia's R&D spending of 1% of GDP is still below the OECD average. As a comparison, Japan's R&D spending is 3% and Korea's is 4.5%. The issue of talent is an important one to address if Malaysia wants to join the ranks of developed countries. Malaysia needs a steady supply of talent in fields that include robotics, artificial intelligence, AI, the hard sciences, nanotechnology, and genetic engineering to be able to adapt to technological change. But for all these to be pursued and realized, political will and a visionary government is of the essence. Ladies and gentlemen, we have witnessed nature's wrath. We have witnessed nature's wrath and the calamity that it inflicted, and much of it is due to the effects of climate change. Around the world, there have been devastating floods, hurricanes, unprecedented heat waves, and forest fires. Here in Malaysia, our monsoons are more severe, as have been droughts in some states. In the coming years, the environment will be more disruptive to our lives and our businesses, and will necessitate a change in government regulations and our enforcement of them. It is incumbent upon us to set sustainable development goals and reduce our dependency on fossil fuels, which in effect demands us to seek and develop renewable energy. It is no more an option. We must be committed to curb environmental damage. In the coming years, the environment will play a more important role and will impact the plans and decisions of government and business. Ladies and gentlemen, these are a few of the themes that I foresee will dominate Malaysia for the next few years. The interlinked nature of our world makes us more vulnerable to any global shock or conflict while we deal with our own uncertainties at home. Given how rapidly the world is changing, we need to question whether our present planning models are valid. Technological advancement is at a rapid pace, and if we are to remain competitive, we need to ensure a high rate of technological adoption as well as a solid pool of talent. Climate issues will become even more important as we battle environmental degradation. Of course, there are other factors that will shape Malaysia's future, such as the quality of governance and food sustainability. They all present challenges to our economic progress and national competitiveness and should compel us to build our capabilities, whether as individuals or businesses. The future holds a great number of challenges for Malaysia to overcome. Equally, it promises a wealth of opportunities, but we need to be ready to embrace them to accelerate our growth. If we do not take action, then I fear that we may forever be a nation that is developing, but never fully developed, even when compared with neighbors less endowed with natural resources. That will indeed be a sad future for Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, in the past, Malaysia has overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles, right from where we began our journey as a young nation. When the world predicted we would descend into violence and economic disaster, we proved them wrong. We became a modern, industrialized nation and economic beacon in the region. Just as history gives us the greatest lessons for the future, so too it can give us faith and hope that just like in the past, this nation of ours can overcome the challenges of the present and the future. I thank you.
Terima kasih. Thank you very much, Tun, for your closing keynote address. I'm sure there have been many questions for you, and I would like to invite you to be seated to take the Q&A session. Silakan, Tun, to be seated. And I'd like to invite Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Nik Mohamad to take the microphone at the podium to moderate the Q&A session. Silakan.
Thank you, Peggy, and very good afternoon to everybody. As you have heard, Tun has kindly agreed to take your questions, at least for the next 45 minutes or so. Before I begin the proceeding for this session, allow me to first remind you of a couple of house rules that we need to apply particularly for this session. Firstly, I ask you, please try to be as brief as you can in your questions. This is to enable us to take as many questions on as many subject matters as possible during the limited time that we have. Secondly, you can really ask any question you like. But please bear in mind that this forum is not a political forum. And Tun is here today as our former Prime Minister, as well as the Honorary President of our foundation, which is a non-political organization. So on that note, I will now open the floor to your questions. If you do have any, we have 4 standing microphones. Please approach them so that I can easily spot you. Please, can we have questions, please? Yes, I see a lady with a hat there.
Yes.
Okay, you have the floor.
Okay, Assalamualaikum. Very good afternoon, everyone, especially to Tun, Dr. Mahathir Mohamad. It's an honor to see you again, and I'm very nervous actually to ask questions because Tun is here. Anyway, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Architect Amy Roslan. I'm an architect. Yes, I might not look like an architect, but I am one. I'm a registered architect. I'm from the Malaysian Institute of Architects ataupun Pertubuhan Arkitek Malaysia, PAM. Tun has been to PAM before, a few years ago. So sorry, I'm very nervous. Okay, anyway, before I pose my question, it seems like no one is standing at the microphone yet, so I'm stealing a bit of time. For your information, Tun, saya pada Alok Start Kedah. Saya orang kampung Tun lah. Okay, and I'm an architect, and a bit of things that I would like to share before I ask you a question is that, first of all, Tun, thank you so much for being an example to all of us here. At the age of 97, you are still working. For your information, I grew up in Japan. My father was a recipient of the Look East policy during your premiership back in 1980s. And I had the opportunity to attend Japanese school. And a few years ago, when I went back to Japan, this is before COVID-19, and during that time, it was, I think, 2019, you had just recently met the former Prime Minister of Japan, Madiang Abe. And my Japanese friends at that time, they said, Amy, we are lost to you already. Previously, we thought Japanese are the best, you know, we are working until we die. But
I'm sorry, Anita.
oh yes, okay.
Can you please
but
be brief and come to your question?
Understood. Just 1 minute. I just have to say this. But they said, Amy, your Prime Minister is at the age of 90-something and still working. We already lost you. So thank you so much, Tun. Every day when I wake up to work, I always remember that if Tun can work at 90-something, why can't I? So thank you for being the inspiration to all of us. Okay, just to respond to what Tun mentioned during his speech just now, it's about we are moving towards technology, artificial intelligence, and so on. So my response as an architect, for instance, is that nowadays, architects, engineers, we are no longer drawing things by hand. We are all moving towards metaverse. We are all moving towards CAD, computer-aided design. We are also moving towards this artificial intelligence. So my first question to Tun is that, from your point of view, Malaysians' policies at the moment, do you think in the next 10 years, do we have the equipment, do we have the support from the government, for instance, or any organizations that can assist all these young architects, young engineers, people who are in the construction industry to move forward with this technology? My second question, you did mention about the blueprint of the education system, the national education policy. One thing that I noticed about the Malaysian education system, of course, like you mentioned, we want to upgrade things about science, technology, and so on, but I think something is missing. I can compare with my learning education in Japan and Malaysia, is that we are lack of education in law. While I was in Japan, we have been taught about, you know, okay, everyone, you have to ride the bus in line because according to this particular law, it said so. However, in Malaysia, we are not being taught federal constitution, for instance. Anyone here in this hall, aside from myself and Tun, have actually read the federal constitution cover to cover from Article 1 until Article 183? Anybody? No one. So without understanding how this federal constitution works, no one will actually further understand except with their very own effort later when they started to work to understand, the principal acts, subsidiary legislations, and, the lower level of laws. So in your opinion...
Can you please come to the question?
Yes, so in your opinion, do you think, is it possible for this federal constitution to be adapted in perhaps at the primary, secondary level of education in Malaysia? So that's my two questions. Thank you so much, and apologize for taking a bit of your time. Thanks.
Well, during my talk just now, I mentioned about the need for us to adopt new technology. But we are behind, we are not. And especially in the field of education, I tried to introduce during the time when I was, for a short period, Minister of Education during my second term as Prime Minister. I tried to introduce a new method of teaching using recorded lessons prepared by the best teachers in the country. The whole thing was brushed aside. They still want to see a class with a teacher to teach the class. But sometimes the teacher is good, sometimes the teacher is bad. And if you have a bad teacher, the students suffer, they fail. But you have a good teacher, you may do very well. But we can make the best teachers prepare the lessons on tape or on electronic recorders and then play back in the class so that the whole country will be taught by the best teachers. But this was not only brushed aside, but ministers refused even to see a demonstration of the new way of teaching. So we are behind time in the technology of teaching. One has to remember that initially you teach by telling the student by word of mouth. But when printing was invented, there were books, and the books help us to learn much more and much faster. But now we have this technology to record everything and play back any number of times. I pointed out that if you have this recording of the class, then they can take the recording home and listen and follow the lessons at home. But we rejected it completely. So we are seeing our schools still using the old way of teaching, and sometimes, of course, we are not making any progress because some teachers are not well up on technology. So technology is very important in terms of drawing diagrams and preparing for your architectural projects and all that. But today, the drawings can be repeated and repeated again using automation. You can have a program that will draw the same thing many, many times. And that means that using this new technology, you can produce the exact drawing, not only here, but you can actually transmit your drawing by phone or by means of communication to somebody far away, even 12,000 miles away. You can transfer to them all the drawings that you have made. So we are way behind in terms of technology. And because of this, I think our education system is lacking is not keeping up with the progress being made in technology to facilitate teaching in the schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Tun. Are you?
Yeah, I'm
Okay, the lady.
testing 1 2 3. Assalamualaikum Tun. My name is Sakina Almira. I am a first year IIUM student. My question is, the background to my question is, since you were the founder of Proton, and sadly we had to sell some shares of Proton away to China, making us around 49%, I believe. What do you think is the future for the automotive industry? That is my question for now. Thank you.
You were the founder of Proton, which was subsequently sold to China. So what do you think is the future of the automotive industry in Malaysia?
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Also, one more. Malaysia is known as #1 halal hub, and I think that is a good place to start. What other industries do you believe that we can expand, making Malaysia more known so we have more investors? Okay, thank you.
Sorry, can you repeat that second question? What other industries should Malaysia embark on?
What other industries that Malaysia should embark on besides agriculture to expand, to further, so Malaysia becomes a hotspot? Just like Singapore is a hotspot, what other industries do you believe that we can expand to make Malaysia a hotspot for foreign investors?
Okay, thank you.
Well, with regard to the automotive industry, things are moving very fast. As you know, we don't want fossil fuel because of the emission of a lot of noxious gases. So we think that the best way is to move into EV, electric vehicle. But there must be some place where you have to generate electricity to be used by the vehicle. And still, that may be due to using fossil fuel or other kinds of fuel in order to generate electricity. So the thinking now is to go into hydrogen, to move the vehicle using hydrogen. And this is a fantastic gas that when it oxidizes, it becomes water. So you can have endless supply of fuel from oxygen. But even then, people are thinking of other means of propelling the automation. But what we need to do is to keep up with the research in this field. Very quickly, the fossil fuel vehicle will be made illegal. You can't use them in some countries. But we must be prepared to use new fuel which are less polluting than the present fossil fuel. But we are far behind. In Malaysia, there are a few electric vehicles, but even electric vehicles are not as good as hydrogen-driven vehicles. So the search for renewable energy is still going on, and the future motor car would be driven by different chemicals that will be less polluting. Research should be done, and money, of course, should be spent in doing this research. With regard to industries, Malaysia became industrialized through foreign direct investment because Malaysia had no technology, no capital, no knowledge about managing big productions, big factories, and no knowledge of the market. So we invited foreigners to come to Malaysia. And they did a good job because they brought in some of their industries into Malaysia. But the time has come when we need to change the way we industrialize the country. If you look at Japan, Korea, and China, they did not just wait for foreign direct investment. They acquired the technology and they invested in big industries for the world market, not for their own market, not for a limited market, but for the world market. In Malaysia, this has already happened. For example, when we went into plantation, we were the top country in pineapple, canned pineapple, for example. Later on, we dominated the world in the production of rubber, and then it was palm oil. But today, what we are doing is to see how rubber gloves can dominate the world. Rubber gloves produced in Malaysia is now the biggest supplier to the world. So we need to identify what else we can produce that is for the world market, not for the local market. Rubber has got hundreds of applications. We should study rubber to identify what products we can produce so as to compete in the world market. As you know, countries like Japan, Korea, they went into kitchen equipment, refrigerators. Today, you don't see GEC refrigerator anymore. All the refrigerators are either Hitachi or Samsung or some other Chinese brand. For the world market, they have ousted all the Western brands altogether. We should emulate them. We should be producing for the world market, compete with the original producers, and defeat them to become the biggest producers of whatever products that before we used to import from Western countries.
Thank you. Do I see? Yes, the gentleman. Okay, whoever reached that phone first can have first go.
Good afternoon.
I'll call you next, sir.
Pardon?
No, I'll call the gentleman next.
Next one.
You go ahead, sir.
Okay. Good evening, Tun. My name is Mr. Hendrik. We met before. The last time was on the 21st of January. I had the honor to be in your office. And I got now the inspiration to reply on the certain discussion what is going on here. To make it more clear for the people and to give more a detailed answer for you on the question of this latest student. I met you before, I worked before for you as well as a consultant, before I decided to do an appeal on you to have an appointment with you for the introduction of a new type of industry for the marine industry in Malaysia. And it is a new concept, unique, patented, protected, and it is set up and designed with some Dutch partners of mine. I live already in Malaysia. I came back in 2000, and I decided to introduce it in Malaysia. But having the experience with what you also highlighted, the attitude and the way of how everything interacts within the departments. I was also working for DRD, as you know, with your National Dressing Initiative. It was for me still a forest with trees, where trees never meet. Only when one tree dies, he touches the living ones. So that was my intention, to have an appointment with you, to get your green light for our concept. It was build, operate, and invest. And if you agree green, I proceed. I was lucky, you agree with my concept, and you advised me to go. My proposal was also to start this first project in Kedah, not because your son was there, because based on my technical background, I advised to start in Kedah. It's the excellent location with deep water, and etc. So I said, okay, if you agree with my concept, then I proceed, and you advised me to go to MBI, Menteri Besar Incorporated, because every state...
Can I paraphrase your question?
Yeah, okay.
I'm trying to understand what you're saying. You've got some concept in marine technology, and you are waiting for Tun's agreement or.
Nou, het is, ja, I explain. Het is een concept voor shipbreaking old ships on a sustainable way, in a special design dock.
Shipbreaking in a sustainable way.
Yeah, normally, the most sustainable 90.9%. Normally, everybody talks about building new ships, and after 25 years they are out of service, and that has to be demolished. It happens now in countries on a very non-sustainable way. Don't mention the country.
Okay,
So our concept
you have an idea on how to do shipbreaking in a sustainable way.
Correct.
Okay, do
we
you
do
want
it-
Tun's opinion on that one?
I got the opinion already, but I just said I got a green light. Let's say
And-
if you take one ship, it takes us 1.5 weeks to do it, break it sustainable. If you compare it with the situation in the other countries, it takes 6 to 8 months. So that is part.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's Tun respond if.
Well, this is a problem that is faced by many investors. They come with good ideas, even new technologies, but they find that the government is not accessible. Ministers refuse to see them. And even though they offer to invest huge sums of money, but the ministers and the people who have the authority to approve or disapprove refuse to see them, refuse to listen to their presentation. It didn't happen to you alone. It happens to many people who complain to me that while they have a good idea of producing certain things, but they cannot get the government approval for their projects. So basically, this is a problem of reluctance on the part of government to actually implement their own projects. They talk about wanting to industrialize the country. But when somebody comes, especially if they are Malaysian, with a new idea, they cannot even make a presentation. And because of that, many proposals for investment have been lost. I had the experience in Langkawi, for example. I wanted to build a tower in Langkawi. It took me 10 years to get the approval. That too is because at one time I was a prime minister, so they had to humor me. But this is an administrative problem, not a technological problem. And I hope that the government authorities will change and be more accommodating to ideas coming from outside, especially as those which is followed by proposals for investments in industries in Malaysia.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's very clear. The issue is here. We have presented a complete feasibility study. We have it is built, operate, and complete invested 100%. Built and operate. There's a lot of employment. I am still waiting for an official confirmation. Yeah? It is an essential industry for the whole world. It is a complete new industry, supplement to the maritime industry. Yeah? From birth to funeral of ships. Now we have signed an agreement in Panama for 2 docks, 300 million euros. 1 dock on the Pacific side, 1 on the Atlantic side. I had the opportunity to offer it to Malaysia, to Kedah, or in any place in Malaysia, to have the opportunity to start this as a cornerstone, this industry additional to the maritime industry. What was already improved, confirmed by a maritime institute under the marine department, that they have to start this type of industry in Malaysia. So it's just, I still have the hope that finally, after 2 years, can get an official confirmation. But I agree with you, and I'm very happy that you highlight this, because otherwise we keep dreaming and it doesn't work. It has to change. It's a disgrace.
Okay,
leave
thank
you a
you,
little bit.
sir.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, guys.
Can I ask a question?
No, Tan Sri, if I may, there is a gentleman waiting. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum, Excellency Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, and Excellency Madam Dr. Siti Hasma, and all the guests here. Actually, I am from Dhaka, Bangladesh, all the way. So this is my great pleasure and honor to see Excellency in here, and we would like to get some advice for our Muslim world, especially for my country, Bangladesh, because there are so many fans of our Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad. As the Excellency become our Prime Minister, anytime can be welcome, is without make a maximum vote over there. So I would like to get, that means special, the advices from you, since we are, after long seeing you in here, and I do meet up with you is several occasions in Dhaka as well as in Malaysia. And last year, my father passed away during the COVID time when his flight is not moving. But my father put my son name also, Mahathir Mohamad. So actually that means we do love Atun Mahathir on that way. So actually that means that's the things is I would like to take from some advices from you. And my question is, that with help of Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, that means Potron make a factory in Chittagong, Bangladesh. So is there any plan to expansion, that means that any latest technology, any other factories over there in Bangladesh? Because I am the director also from Bangladesh, Malaysia Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So I would like to get that answer from you. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it's not difficult to develop a country, but you need a leader who wants to develop the country. But if you elect a leader who's more interested in making money for himself, then the country will not develop. So leadership is very important. If you have a good leader, for example, Park Chung-hee, the leader in the president of Korea, he wanted Korea to develop. At one time, Korea was far behind Malaysia, but he wanted Korea to become an industrialized country. What he did was he invited about 10 people and told them that you have to go into this, and this industry, and he will back them up. And as a result, you see people like Hyundai and Kia and Samsung emerging because it was encouraged by the government. The government encouraged them to go into industry and actually help them. So we need good leaders who will dedicate his life to developing the country. Of course, Malaysia decided to build a car, a motor car. I mean, people laugh at the idea that a developing country wishing to build their own car. But it happens because you decide to do it, it is done. And today we are even investing in Bangladesh. We have invested in Pakistan and also in Kenya. Assembly plants there which will assemble proton cars made in Malaysia. So the way to do it is fairly easy, but you need political will to do it. So sometimes politicians are more interested in their own position rather than in their contribution towards the development of the country. So there is really nothing mysterious about Malaysia's development at one stage. It's simply because we have a government that is dedicated to developing Malaysia with the ambition to become a developed country by 2020. Unfortunately, before that was achieved, the government was changed, and the government the new government was not interested in achieving the target set by the previous government. So today, we are not a developed country simply because the government decides not to be a developed country, but instead just to be a prime minister with a lot of power, a lot of money, all for themselves. This is what has happened. So a good country can become bad with a bad leader. A bad country can become good with a good leader.
Thank you. Tan Sri Vincent Tan, you have a question.
Yeah, Tun. I want to say this. You know, English is very important internationally. I think today you can see here, you have two Malay ladies who speak good English. But what about all those Malay ladies who don't speak good English, who went even to university? They don't speak English. They're good. They don't speak good English. They won't be asking you questions. So what I want to say is English is so important. But we have the government. Our government have not really emphasized the importance of English. And I think during your time, you have emphasized it, but still, perhaps, in my view, not enough. Perhaps the government, maybe you should advise the government. That is, of course, first you have to be friendly with the government of the day, Tun. then you can advise them. I think we need, personally, I think we should bring back English medium and treat English and Malay medium both equally important, bilingual. And of course, many times I've said that I asked this to many ministers, senior government officials. They feel that maybe we can't do it because we don't have enough English teachers. I think we can hire English teachers from overseas to come and train our people. There are also a lot of Malaysians who can do this job. Even those who have retired can be recalled to do this work, because those days retirement is early, 55, 60. Even 60, the retirement is still early. There are many people who are 70 to 80, they're still in good shape, they can still teach. Like for example, you know, Tun, you're a shining example. 97, you still go to office at 9 o'clock, leave at 6 or 7 p.m. So we have enough talent and local expertise. Plus, of course, we can import more people so that we can make English very important. Because frankly, I don't know those who don't know English well, how they cope in the internet, finding information, mostly in English. Of course, you can translate, Google Translate and this and that, but you will not be as good as you can, and you understand the language yourself. And every time you translate, one meeting for an hour can go into 2 hours. You know. So perhaps you should do your best and try to convince the next government of the day after this, after November 19, to see how we can bring English back and make English very important. And some very senior politicians speak about wanting Malay, how important the Malay language is. I do not I agree that the Malay language is very important, but we should be fluent, we should be good in both language, Malay and English, so that more of our people will have opportunities all over the world. You know, I only studied up to Form 5. I never had the opportunity to go to for further studies. I was a good student. My parents were, I come from a poor family, so I didn't have the opportunity to go overseas and study. But from Form 5 those days, school certificate was as good as getting a degree now, I think. And, this, to me, that demonstrates the importance of English. I always tell people, McDonald's would have not, my first break in my life was to get the McDonald's franchise from Malaysia when I was 28 years old. McDonald's would have never given me that if I don't know how to speak English. Can you imagine? I have to hire an interpreter to go around with me? No, they will not accept it, definitely.
Thank you.
So what I want to say is a lot of people, especially low-income people, the poor, their children will not be able to study English because those who study English in Malaysia are the elite. They go to international school, you pay a lot of money for it, and many top politicians send their children and grandchildren to international school, but they advocate that Malay is so important, and English is, not so important. But their children and grandchildren go to international school, go overseas to study. Some go overseas to study at a very young age. So I hope they will practice what they preach to all Malaysians. Thank you very much.
I am a Malay. At times I've been called a Malay extremist because of my continuous focus on helping the Malays to catch up in every field. But way back in 1946, when I was still in the university, I already promoted Malay. But it is for us to use Malay as a national language, to bring us together because we speak the same language. But now we have this idea to make Malay an international language. We are a country of 32 million people. Indonesia is a country of 300 million people. It is more logical for the Indonesian language to be made an international language than this small country of ours. But people somehow rather get worked up. They express their patriotism through promoting their own language and already not promoting English. Whether we like it or not, English has become an international language. Of course, historically, the English people conquered, the English Empire encircled the whole world. The sun never sets on the British Empire, and wherever they go, they bring their language along with them. But not only the language, but the knowledge that you can use English to access. So schools were developed all over the world which use English. And so it became an international language. And since you have to communicate, you have to learn a language that everybody can understand. So it is important that we master the English language. We tried to promote our own language. That is why I suggested that for science and math, teach these two subjects in English, but the others you can teach in Malay. You're not losing the Malay language, but you are promoting mastery of a second language. In today's world, everybody should have command of at least two languages, his home language as well as English. Of course, you can choose French or whatever, but English, even the French communicate with people in English, and so do the Germans. And what is more, all the research papers in science, in technology, are written in English, even by the Japanese. For the Japanese to communicate their findings to other people, if they merely talk in Japanese, nobody would understand. But they have to translate into English so that people will understand. I am amazed that in China, in Japan, and in Korea, the translators or interpreters spoke excellent English. And when I asked one Chinese interpreter who was accompanying me, where did she learn English? He said, in Beijing. She didn't go anywhere else. She studied English in Beijing and spoke excellent English. So it's not something that is, that downgrades your own language simply because you have command of a second language. I believe that in Malaysia, when you debate in parliament, you should use Malay. But when you want to talk to the Japanese, you have to use an interpreter. You know, I have seen the idea is that now our diplomats, when talking to foreigners, must speak in Malay, and the translator then translate it into English, and the foreigner has got an interpreter who translates the English into their language. When it should take only 1 hour, it takes 4 hours. It's not practical. But knowledge comes to us in English, and we have to learn English in order to acquire knowledge. Otherwise, we will be behind, especially in the technologies. That is why I may be accused of not being patriotic, not promoting Malay. I can speak Malay like anybody else, but to be able to speak English is a bonus and enables us to communicate with the rest of the world. You know, when you change the government, they went back to teaching science and math in Malay. Of course, they are very good in science and math, but I doubt whether they can access the scientific papers written by other people in English. So we are depriving ourselves not only of mastery of English, but of knowledge. We will be behind others because we do not promote the use of English in acquisition of knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Tun. Tun, we have actually used up the 45 minutes that was allotted to us. Do you mind accepting one more question at least? Thank you, Tun. Please go ahead, but please make it short, yeah?
Good evening, Tun. I'm Dr. Nedu. I'm a dentist by profession. I went to Standard 1 when you were the education minister in 1975, and I graduated in 1992 when you were the prime minister. And I went through the time when, I went through the education during the time you were in power. And education is basis of human capital development. And lately, there's a lot of complaint about our current education system. The original education system was very much knowledge-based, and the current education system is exam-based. Do you think, or is there any possibility, and can you foresee that the education system that we have now change back to the system that we had in 1975? Thank you, Tun.
Change the government. As long as we have this government, their focus is on something else, on keeping the people as ignorant as possible. They don't want people to acquire knowledge. That seems to be their objective. Because if you have a lot of people who are not very intelligent, then it's much easier to influence them. If they become very well educated, you know, educated people will talk back to you. They will argue with you. But when they do not have the knowledge, they don't argue, they accept what you say. So politicians, I think, would like to see their country people by stupid people so that they can influence them. So this is the problem that we face. The other thing that Vincent mentioned just now about learning languages. Today, you don't need teachers. You can buy courses in the English language or whatever language. They are extremely good. They are prepared by excellent people. And you can have the tape or the recording played to you on TV and repeated over and over again, the way it is pronounced, the way it is formed and all that, that you can do not only in the class, but at home. So learning language now is very easy. You don't have to have a teacher. If you don't have a teacher, you can always buy these language courses in English, prepared by many people, and you can learn the language that way. No need for teachers. So I hope that Malaysia will come to its senses and bring back English as a language of knowledge. Then we will be moving forward much more effectively to become a developed country.
Thank you, Tun. I think that's a good note to end this session. Can you please join me to give Tun a really big hand for his time? Thank you, Tun. Now I hand you back to Peggy.
Thank you, Tan Sri. Thank you very much, Tun, and thank you, Tan Sri, for moderating the session. And now I'd like to invite Tun and Tan Sri to rejoin the guests at the round table. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up the Perdana Leadership Foundation CEO Forum 2022. It has been a long, full day loaded with dialogues and conversations around issues and trends impacting the Malaysian economy. And I think any more information coming in this hall will be an overload. So I hope it has been a day well spent for you. And on that note, it is timely for us to record our thanks and appreciation for all the sponsors and support without which this event would not be possible. So a big thank you to our bronze sponsors, Aeon Malaysia Company, Bank Muamalat, Balsted Plantation, Iris Corporation, Invisite, Malakoff, Northport. Our gold sponsors, CIMB, IGM Corporation, KL Kapong, and a big thank you to our platinum sponsor, Sime Darby Plantation. And today we have enjoyed the good ambience of the Berjaya Times Square Convention Center and the delicious food prepared by the hotel. So I'd like to thank the venue sponsor, Berjaya Corporation Berhad, for their generous sponsorship, and I'd like to invite a round of applause for Tan Sri Vincent Tan and his team for their impeccable service throughout the day. And terima kasih too to all other supporting organizations that would include MPH and Kim Lun as well. And thank you to all the distinguished panelists, moderators and speakers, as well as all of you participants who have been very actively participating and who have been very good audience. And last but not least, another round of gracious hospitality by our venue sponsor. The hotel has prepared high tea for us to send it off well-fed and tummy happy. But before food is brought to the main table, we have a little window for a little bit of fun with Tun. We all know selfie, we all know Wi-Fi. I have coined up this word called groupie. So we would like to have a big everybody photo with Tun, and it's just quite impossible to capture everybody in the photo unless I invite some of you, especially those by the sides and at the end, to maybe gather around here. I have sought clearance for this, of course, to come near Tun for a group photograph. Come near enough, but no body contact, please. And yeah, please, make your way here. And photographers are already up on the stage, all ready for this. Tuan fotografer, saya nak minta tu yang belakang tu berdiri ke duduk boleh? Stand up, okay, stand up. All of us, behind and everywhere, just stand up. All right. Thumbs up, everybody thumbs up. And a big smile. Thank you. Jacob, thank you. Thank you everybody for the photo opportunity. Big round of applause for ourselves, please, for all the fun. And high tea is served. For those of you who are not being served at table, please do help yourselves to the buffet which is being served at the foyer. Thank you, bon appetit.